Hello. Because the story I'm about to read is about a little brother, I decided to ask a few of the girls I know to give me a list of some of the good things and bad things about their little brothers. Well, why don't we just start with the bad things then? Bad things about little brothers. Hogs the back seat of the car, hogs the remote control, stinky tennis shoes, wipes his nose on my teddy bear, those disgusting raindrops they leave all over the toilet seat, steals my Halloween candy, eats my Halloween candy, throws up my Halloween candy, secretly presses his butt print into my Colour Me Mine plates before they get baked, how they always say embarrassing things about you in front of cute boys, repeat the same stupid lines from the same stupid Will Ferrell movies over and over and over and over and over and over and over, hides paintballs in my shoes, puts on my shoes and makes fun of the way I walk, puts on my retainer, makes fun of the way I talk, feeds the dog broccoli and beans and makes him sit next to me during American Idol, resyncs my iPod and replaces my library with Teletubbies and the Wiggles, tries to make me laugh when I'm drinking milk, pokes me in church till I yell something terrible and get in trouble with the pastor and probably God, body odor, spitting, an obnoxious laugh, bad breath, greasy hair, evil eyes, yellow teeth, skid marks, and finally, flicks his eye boogers into my oatmeal. Well, that was charming, and now the good things about little brothers. He's not afraid of worms. Huh. But that seems to be the whole list. Well, I'm sure the girls just got busy and didn't have time to finish the good list about their dear, sweet little brothers. Well, anyway, the story is called Little Brother and Little Sister, or sometimes it's called The Enchanted Fawn, and it's by the Brothers Grimm. Little brother took his little sister by the hand and said, "Since our mother died, we've not had a single good hour. Our stepmother beats us every day, and whenever we come near her, she kicks us away with her feet. Hard leftover crusts of bread are our food. The little dog under the table is better off, for she often throws it a good morsel. God have mercy if our mother were to know about this. Come, let us go away together into the wide world." They walked the whole day over meadows, fields, and stones, and when it rained, the little sister said, "God and our hearts are crying together." In the evening, they came to a large forest, and they were so tired from sorrow and hunger and from the long walk that they climbed into a hollow tree and fell asleep. The next day, when they awoke, the sun was already high in the sky and shone hotly down onto the tree. Then the brother said, "Sister, I am thirsty. If I knew of a little spring, I would go and get a drink. I think I hear one." The brother got up and took his sister by the hand to try and find the spring. Now, the wicked stepmother was a witch, and she had seen how the two children had gone away and had secretly crept after them, as witches do, and she had bewitched all the springs in the woods. They found a spring, glistening as it ran over the stones, and the brother was about to drink from it, but the sister heard how its rushing sound said, "Whoever drinks from me will become a tiger. Whoever drinks from me will become a tiger." Then the sister cried out, "Oh, please, brother, do not drink, or you'll become a wild animal and tear me to pieces." The brother did not drink, although he was very thirsty, but he said, "I will wait for the next spring." When they came to the second spring, the sister heard it say as well, "Whoever drinks from me becomes a wolf. Whoever drinks from me will become a wolf." Then the sister cried out, "Oh, please, brother, do not drink, or you will become a wolf and eat me up." The brother did not drink and said, "I will wait until we come to the next spring, but then I must drink. Say whatever you will, for I'm very thirsty." And when they came to the third spring, the sister heard how it was rushing and the sound that said, "Whoever drinks from me will become a deer. Whoever drinks from me will become a deer." And the sister said, "Oh, brother, do not drink, or you will become a deer and run away from me." But the brother had already knelt down by the spring, leaned over, and drunk from the water. As soon as the first drops touched his lip, he lay there in the form of a young deer. Now the sister cried over her poor bewitched brother, and the deer cried also, sitting sadly next to her. Finally the girl said, "Be quiet, my dear little deer. I will never, never leave you." And she took off her golden garter and put it around the deer's neck, and then she picked some rushes and wove them into a soft cord. This she tied to the little animal and led it onward, walking deeper and deeper into the woods. After they had walked a long, long way, they finally came to a little house. The girl looked in, and because it was empty, she thought, "We can stay here and live." She found leaves and moss to make a soft bed for the deer, and every morning she went out and gathered roots and berries and nuts for herself, and brought tender grass for the little deer, who ate out of her hand and was contented and played around about her. In the evening, when the sister was tired and had said her prayers, she laid her head on the deer's back for a pillow and gently fell asleep. If only the brother had had his human form, it would have been a wonderful life. For some time they were alone like this in the wilderness, and then it happened that the king of the country had a great hunt in these woods. The blasts of the horns, the barkings of the dog, and the merry shouts of the huntsmen sounded through the trees, and the little deer heard this and wanted ever so much to be with them. "Oh," he said to his sister, "let me go and join the hunt. I cannot resist it any longer." He begged so long that she finally agreed. "But," she said to him, "come back to me in the evening. I must lock the door to keep the wild huntsman out. To let me know that it's you, knock and say, 'My little sister, let me in.' If you do not say that, I will not unlock the door." Then the young deer jumped away. He felt so good and was so happy to be in the open air. The king and his huntsmen saw the beautiful animal and started after him, but they could not catch him. And whenever they thought that they surely had him, he jumped away over the bushes and disappeared. When it was dark, he ran to the little house, knocked, and said, "My little sister, let me in." She opened the door for him, and he jumped inside and rested all night on his soft bed. The next day, the hunt began anew, and when the little deer again heard the hunting horn and the huntsman's shouts, he could not resist, but said, "Sister, open the door for me. I must be off." His sister opened the door for him, saying, "But this evening you must be here again and say the password." When the king and his huntsmen again saw the young deer with his golden collar, they all chased after him, but he was too fast and nimble for them, and so it went the entire day. But as evening fell, the huntsmen had surrounded him, and one of them wounded him a little in the foot, causing him to limp. But slowly he ran away. A huntsman crept after him to the little house, and heard how he called out, "My little sister, let me in," and saw that someone opened the door for him, and then immediately shut it again. The huntsman took notice of all of this, and then went to the king and told him what he'd seen and heard. And then the king said, "Tomorrow we will continue with our hunt." The little sister, however, was terribly frightened when she saw that her young deer was wounded. She washed the blood off him, applied herbs, and said, "Go to bed, my sweet dear, so that you will get well again." But the wound was so slight that the next morning the deer no longer felt it, and when he heard the merry sound of the hunt outside, he said, "I cannot resist it. I must be there. They will never get me." Crying, the sister said, "This time they will kill you, and I will be alone in the woods, forsaken by the whole world. I will not let you out." "Then I will die here from grief," answered the deer. "When I hear the hunting horn, I feel that I have to jump out of my shoes." Then the sister could not help herself, and with a heavy heart she unlocked the door for him. The deer vigorously and joyfully bounded off into the woods, and when the king saw him, he said to the huntsman, "Chase after him all day long and into the night, but take care that no one does him any harm." And as soon as the sun had set, the king said to the huntsman, "Now come and show me the little house in the woods." And when he came to the door, he knocked and called out, "Dear little sister, let me in." The door opened, and the king walked in, and there stood a girl who was more beautiful than any girl he had ever seen. The girl was frightened when she saw that it was not her dear, but a man wearing a golden crown on his head who came in. However, the king looked kindly at her, reached out his hand to her, and said, "Will you go with me to my castle and be my dear wife?" "Oh, yes," answered the girl, "but the little deer must go with me. I cannot leave him." And the king said, "He shall stay with you as long as you live, and he shall want nothing." And just then he came bounding in, and the sister again tied him to the cord of rushes. She herself took hold of it and walked out of the little house with him. The king lifted the beautiful girl onto his horse and took her to his castle, where their wedding was held with great splendor. She was now the queen, and they lived happily together for a long time. The deer was cared for and cherished and ran about in the castle garden. Now, the wicked stepmother, who had caused the children to go out into the world, thought that the sister had been torn to pieces by wild animals in the woods, and that the brother, as a deer, had been killed by the huntsman. When she heard that they were happy and well off, envy and hatred filled her heart, leaving her no peace. Her only thoughts were how she could bring about their downfall. Her own daughter, who was ugly as night and had only one eye, complained to her, saying, "I'm the one who should have become queen." "Oh, just be quiet," answered the old woman, then comforted her by saying, "When the time comes, I shall be at hand." As time went by, the queen brought a handsome little boy into the world. It happened at a time when the king was out hunting. Then the old witch took the form of the chambermaid, went into the room where the queen was lying, and said to her, "Oh, come, your bath is ready. It will do you good and give you fresh strength. Hurry before it gets cold." The witch's daughter was also nearby. They carried the weak queen into the bathroom and put her into the tub, and then they locked the door shut and ran away. Now, they had made a fire of such hellish heat in the bathroom that the beautiful young queen was soon suffocated. And when this was done, the old woman took her daughter, put a nightcap on her head, and laid her in the queen's bed. Furthermore, she gave her the form and appearance of the queen, but she could not replace the lost eye. So that the king would not notice it, the witch's daughter was to lie on the side where she had no eye. In the evening, when the king came home and heard that he had a little son, he was delighted. He was about to go to his dear wife's bed to see how she was, when the old woman quickly called out, "You must leave the curtains closed. The queen is not yet permitted to look into the light. She must have her rest." The king went away, not knowing that a false queen was lying there in her bed. At midnight, when everyone was asleep, the nurse, who was sitting in the nursery by the cradle, and who was the only one still awake, saw the door open and the true queen walk in. She took the child from the cradle, laid him on her arm, and nursed him. And then she fluffed up his pillow, laid him back down, and covered him with his little quilt. And she did not forget the dear, but went to the corner where he was laying and stroked his back. And then she went back out, through the door, without saying a word. The next morning, the nurse asked the watchman whether anyone had come into the castle during the night, and they answered, "No, we did not see anyone." Well, in this manner, she came many nights, never speaking a word. The nurse saw her every time, but she did not dare to tell anyone about it. After some time had thus passed, the queen began to speak in the night, saying, "How is my child? How is my dear? I shall come 2 more times, then never again." The nurse did not answer her, but when the queen had disappeared again, she went to the king and told him everything. And the king said, "Good heaven, what is this? Tomorrow night I will keep watch by the child." And that evening he went into the nursery, and at midnight the queen again appeared and said, "How is my child? How is my dear? I shall come 1 more time, then never again." She nursed the child as she had done before, and then disappeared. The king did not dare to speak to her, but on the following night he kept watch again, once again, and she said, "How is my child? How is my dear? I come this one time, then never again." Now the king could not restrain himself. He jumped towards her, saying, "You can only be my own dear wife." And she answered, "Yes, I am your own dear wife." And in that moment, by the grace of God, she came back to life fresh, vibrant, and healthy. She told the king about the crime that the wicked witch and her daughter had committed against her, and the king ordered both to be brought before the court, and a judgment was pronounced against them. The daughter was led into the woods, where she was torn to pieces by wild animals, and the witch was thrown into a fire where she miserably burned to death. And as soon as she had burned to ashes, the deer was transformed, and he received his human form again, and the sister and brother lived happily together until they died. The end.
Oh, hello. I don't know about you, but sometimes I just get in the mood to cry. And it doesn't even have to be anything wrong, I just decide it would be really fun to be sad and pitiful and feel sorry for myself, just for a little while. There's lots of good ways to enjoy feeling pitiful and sad. One of my favourites is to lie in bed all day eating candy bars and watching movies about sweet, beautiful women who would die much too young. Oh, there's one called Love Story that's so terribly, terribly sad. It's really hard to beat. Oh, another good way to enjoy being totally bummed out is to lie in a warm bubble bath, drink a big mug of hot chocolate, and put on some really, really sad music. There's a French singer from long ago, Edith Piaf, whose music, la, 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 la. Oh, it's just so sad and pitiful. Your bathtub will overflow with the water of your own tears. Oh, it's too much fun. Now, here we have a story that's perfect for when you're in the mood to be sad. Oh, it's wonderfully tragic story of a poor little girl who sells matches on the street. So get out your hankies and prepare to blow, because here, just for you, is The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen. It was terribly cold and nearly dark on the last evening of the old year, and the snow was falling fast. In the cold and the darkness, a poor little girl with bare head and naked feet roamed through the streets. It's true she had on a pair of slippers when she left home, but they weren't of much use. They were very large, so large indeed that they had belonged to her mother, and the poor little creature had lost them and running across the street to avoid two carriages that were rolling along at a terrible state. One of the slippers she could not find, and a boy seized upon the other and ran away with it, saying that he could use it as a cradle when he had children of his own. So the little girl went on with her little naked feet, which were quite red and blue with the cold. In an old apron she carried a number of matches and had a bundle of them in her hands. No one had bought anything of her the whole day, nor had anyone given her even a penny. Shivering with cold and hunger, she crept along. Poor little child. She looked the picture of misery. The snowflakes fell on her long, fair hair, which hung in curls on her shoulders, but she regarded them not. Lights were shining from every window, and there was a savoury smell of roast goose, for it was New Year's Eve. Yes, she remembered that. In a corner, between two houses, one of which projected beyond the other, she sank down and huddled herself together. She had drawn her little feet under her, but she could not keep off the cold. And she dared not go home, for she'd sold no matches and could not take home even a penny of money. Her father would certainly beat her. Besides, it was almost as cold at home as here, for they had only the roof to cover them, which the wind howled through, although the largest holes had been stopped up with straw and rags. Her little hands were almost frozen with the cold. Perhaps burning a match might be some good, if she could draw it from the bundle and strike it against the wall, just to warm her fingers. She drew one out. Scratch! How it sputtered as it burnt. It gave a warm, bright light like a little candle, and she held her hand over it. Oh, it was really a wonderful light. It seemed to the little girl that she was sitting by a large iron stove with polished brass feet and a brass ornament. Oh, how the fire burned and seemed so beautifully warm that the child stretched out her feet to it as if to warm them when, lo, the flame of the match went out, the stove vanished, and she had only the remains of the half-burnt match in her hand. She rubbed another match on the wall. It burst into a flame, and where its light fell upon the wall, it became as transparent as a veil, and she could see into the room. The table was covered with a snowy white tablecloth, on which stood a splendid dinner service, and a steaming roast goose stuffed with apples and dried plums. And what was still more wonderful, the goose jumped down from the dish and waddled across the floor with a knife and fork in its breast to the little girl. And then the match went out, and there remained nothing but the thick, damp, cold wall before her. She lighted another match, and then she found herself sitting under a beautiful Christmas tree. It was larger and more beautifully decorated than the one which she had seen through the glass door at the rich merchant's. Thousands of tapers were burning upon the green branches, and colored pictures, like those she had seen in the show windows, looked down upon it all, and the little one stretched out her hand towards them, and the match went out. The Christmas lights rose higher and higher, till they looked to her like the stars in the sky, and then she saw a star fall, leaving behind it a bright streak of light. Someone is dying, thought the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only one who had ever loved her, who was now dead, had told her that when a star falls, a soul was going up to God. She again rubbed a match on the wall, and the light shone round her, and in the brightness stood her old grandmother, clear and shining, yet mild and loving in her appearance. "Grandmother," cried the little one, "oh, take me with you. I know you will go away when the match burns out. You will vanish like the warm stove and the roast goose and the large, glorious Christmas tree." And she made haste to light the whole bundle of matches, for she wished to keep her grandmother there. And the matches glowed with a light that was brighter than the noonday, and her grandmother had never appeared so large or so beautiful. And she took the little girl in her arms, and they both flew upwards in the brightness and joy far above the earth, where there was neither cold nor hunger nor pain, for they were with God. In the dawn of the morning there lay the poor little one, with pale cheeks and smiling mouth, leaning against the wall. She had been frozen to death on the last evening of the year, and the New Year's sun rose and shone upon a little corpse. The child still sat in the stiffness of death, holding the matches in her hand, one bundle of which was burnt. "She tried to warm herself," said some. No one imagined what beautiful things she had seen, nor into what glory she had entered with her grandmother on New Year's Day. The end.